Hello, folks. Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. My name's Mark.
And my name is Brent.
Hey, all right. We got that right.
Yeah, and you're wearing the wrong shirt today. So I don't know where your dad joke shirt is, but you need to put it back on.
I told you, Brent, I can't wear it every time. Like, I have to wash it sometimes. Yeah. I'm pretty proud of that shirt.
For all of our listeners, Mark is wearing an athletic shirt.
Yes. I'm trying to turn over a new leaf, Brent.
Yeah,
the weather's changing.
Drinking a Coke and wearing athletic clothing.
Coke Zero, yeah. I give people the impression that I can actually do. I actually earned this shirt. I ran 5K or whatever, pushing a stroller.
Pushing a stroller,
yeah.
Okay.
So that was a while ago, but I could probably do it again. Anyways, I don't think people are too interested in my athletic prowess. We'll do a separate podcast on that. But there's a few recent announcements we want to talk about. In between interviewing...
we had a bunch of guests on, and we're super excited about that. And we learned a lot, too.
Yeah, hopefully our listeners did, too.
Yeah, I learned a bunch. So,
okay.
But yeah, it'd be interesting to get people's feedback from that. Jimmy Song, he's from Texas. He's a Bitcoin guy.
Yeah.
And he's got some interesting ideas and interesting books. People want to check out his book and, dive in further.
Yep.
Fiat Ruins Everything is one of them. There's a bunch of them. And Ben's the statistics guy.
Yeah. Edge analytics.
Yeah. We didn't have a ton of time with him, but what time we did have, he gave us some good insights. So
and if you're not a real estate professional and you don't subscribe to his service, you just follow him on Twitter because a lot of the same stuff gets out on there, not in the same format.
Yeah.
And so forth, but the information is out there.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of it lately. Right?
Well, there's a lot of announcements because
so the federal government's coming up on the 16th, which when are we?
We're the 12th, so.
Yeah, we're the 12th. So by the time we release, that'll be out. So we're going to be stale already by then. But they're kind of telegraphing a lot of what.
Telegraphing, that's old technology, no?
Yeah.
We're here to talk about new things.
Can we change that? They're Instagramming their what they're going to do. They're tweeting what they're going to do.
They're Xing it, I don't know.
Yeah. No, but they are giving some hints as to what's going on or what the federal government's going to look like. And
what the federal government's going to look like? Or
the federal budget.
Yeah.
Possibly what the government
do they still do budgets?
Yeah, for...
like how realistic are their
for
budgets?
Funsies, I guess. Okay. They're just going to spend what they're going to spend anyway.
Is that like a make work project?
Yeah,
I'm involved in making a budget right now, and it's it's quite a bit of work. But
yeah,
if you can just make the money out of nowhere, what's the point of budgeting? I don't know.
Well, like we said, taxation is just a way to enforce behavior, right?
Right.
Really, and it's kind of window dressing. Okay, you had a good stat there, right? So making a budget, presumably you're the one, you didn't hire a whole bunch of people to make the budget for you, right?
No.
Okay, but what does the government do?
Yeah, so this chart, I don't have it on the screen, but we're looking at employment trends in Canada.
Yep.
And the last 3 months, the change in employment has... I guess there's a big divergence between the public sector and the private sector. So private sector has actually gone down slightly in the number of...
So they've lost jobs.
Yeah. So take that for what you will. But the public sector has gone up astronomically. Which,
and we don't even have a space program.
But they got to make a budget, and it's tough to make a budget. You got to hire a bunch of people.
Okay, what are the numbers?
What is this? 80 in thousands. So 80,000 new public sector jobs
in 3 months.
That is what this chart says. 3 months change in employment. It's close to 80. It's like 78, 79,000 public sector.
And private sector?
Negative 2,000.
So, you could say...
Yeah.
So, okay, here's my argument, is that we're in a recession already.
Yeah.
We talked to Ben Rabideau a little bit about it, He wouldn't call that, but I'm much brasher than he.
Yeah, but he also has more of like a following, and people trust what he says, right, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, nobody cares what I say,
yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm just saying.
You're good. Whatever you want to say. I don't know. I'm not even listening. What are you saying?
Oh, man, you're worse than my wife.
Oh, shoot.
But no, I think we're in a recession. And, one of the signs of recession is employment. Right, if employment shrinks for a long time, typically that means you're in a recession. It's not the only factor, but the government is doing a great job of hiding shrinking employment with massive government hiring. And if you look at the number of civil servants from when Trudeau started to now, I can't remember what it is. It's like double or some ridiculous number.
Yeah, he's on a really good track here with hiring public sector workers. Like there's a chart that's kind of floating around from Scotiabank Economics.
Yeah.
And it shows you all the different prime ministers and their history of like their terms in office, how many public sector workers they hire, and he is like double everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's ridiculous. So people make the argument, well, that includes anybody in the public sector. Right? So this is federal government, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So because people say, well, that means nurses and police officers. Well, number one, they're not federally regulated, right? That's provincial, so it's not more nurses. Maybe it's more RCMP, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, has anybody seen an increase in frontline workers anywhere? No.
Yeah, like go to the
it's
hospital,
all middle
check the
management,
wait times.
It's all admin, right? DEI. It's all like it's not productive hiring. Jimmy Song talked about rent seekers.
Yeah.
And he said, if you want to, do something with your life, like go be productive. And I'm sure I'm going to offend anybody who works for the government here. But I mean, by and large, these aren't productive jobs, right? Yeah. They're pushing paper. They're managing other levels of government. They're increasing the size of the bureaucracy, which, I guess if we were doing really well as a country economically, okay, we could afford that. But we're not. And so to me, this is UBI. This is universal basic income by another name. You're hiring lots of unqualified people to do jobs that aren't necessary.
With money you don't have.
With money you don't have.
That's
the state of our federal government. And I mean, we rag on the federal government a lot. Provincial governments don't have a great track record either.
Yeah.
Whether you're in Ontario, BC, wherever. I mean,
we're the most indebted non-sovereign.
Yeah. And so they're not doing a great job either.
But there's a difference between the employment or like the unemployment rate and the employment rate. Right?
Yeah, that is a very good point.
If you think the unemployment rate is going up, right? So like it just kind of ticked back up again. Well, unemployment is actually, those are the people looking for jobs.
Yeah.
But employment is different. Employment is people who are of working age and could work who aren't working. So if you dive into that a little bit, like the unemployment's going up because, there's people out there looking for jobs and they can't find them. Okay. But then the overall employment is way down because like there's a ton of people out there who could work but aren't working.
Yeah.
So what are they doing?
Yeah, because unemployment, if you stop looking for work, then you're not counted in those unemployment numbers anymore. If you just give up and go on benefits, now they don't count that, so you can kind of manipulate your unemployment numbers. Whereas the employment numbers, I think, is more realistic. And they're dropping because, well, we've talked about it, right? The number of companies filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah, private sector.
Just anecdotal data, especially anybody in housing, right? Like, wow.
There's not as much work.
What happened to housing?
Yeah.
Because it's such a big part of our economy. Not building single-family homes, right? Existing projects are being built, new stuff not.
Yeah.
And I don't know. A lot of different industries that I talk to, it's kind of the same, unless people are doing like government work. So at least there's that, right? The private sector benefits from public initiatives and construction.
Where are they getting all the money?
I don't know.
Well, the other thing, the Bank of Canada held rates.
Yes.
This week.
Yeah, so predicting the interest rates and so forth is like a bit of a fool's game. And, what does it really like? Who cares, right?
Yeah.
In the long run. But for us, it kind of matters because it points to sort of where we're headed. And as real estate investors, we want to know, like, where are things headed? What's happening?
Yeah.
And I mean, it looks pretty grim right now, right? We're looking at the U.S. Inflation is still high. And I mean, if you have to know they're manipulating the CPI data, the Consumer Price Index.
Just to kind of break down, or I just want you to kind of explain, why does it matter that inflation is still high, right? So if you talk about the U.S., you say inflation is still high. Why is that a big deal?
So the generally accepted consensus is that if inflation drops, they can drop rates. The government can cut the rates, and then when rates drop, that means mortgages are cheaper.
But they have the Bank of Canada, the U.S. Federal Reserve has that target to hit, and that's kind of their stated objective.
Yeah, so we talked about it before. 2% inflation has always been sort of the goal and the accepted target, right? I think we're going to see a shift, and this isn't just my idea. I don't have any original ideas, by the way. I just get them from other people. I'm like, yeah, that one's good.
Professional regurgitator.
Not even professional.
Okay.
I'm an amateur regurgitator.
All right.
No, but where the narrative is going to shift to like maybe 3.5% inflation is where we should be. That's the new norm. And I think it is.
Yeah.
Despite CPI being a made-up number, it's at least a benchmark, and as long as
can the central bank actually control inflation?
How long do you have, right?
Yeah,
that's another argument. But what they can do is react to it, and that's what the interest rate cuts or hikes or not moves is about, and that's what everybody kind of tracks. And in the greater scheme of the economy, there's a lot of other stuff going on. But for real estate investors, that price makes a big that interest rate makes a big difference. So
because you're a big part of your cost, probably the biggest part of your cost as an investor is the borrowing of the capital that you need to buy the asset. And
exactly. So we went from last year, the market was kind of pricing in 6 interest rate cuts by the Fed in the U.S. this year.
Yeah.
Which, if they do it, we're probably going to do it in Canada. To now, they're pricing in maybe 3.
Yeah.
And I could see a scenario where they don't cut rates at all this year if inflation remains high. Because again, the idea is if they cut rates, that will contribute to inflation. It's the sort of prevailing logic.
Yeah.
So they can't cut too early because then they're just going to increase inflation.
Well, one way they could really get inflation under control is by manipulating the statistics.
That is the best way to control them, which I think they're doing.
It's really fast. You just get the statistics and then you change the decimal place over one, and then it looks great.
It's that and controlling the narrative, right? What the market thinks and what people think. So the banks had forecast the 3.4% CPI print, so that's a year-over-year change. It came in at 3.6%, which was a bit of a surprise. But I mean, predicting inflation is so, I don't know, it's also very hard. But that's changing sentiment, and Powell, the chairman of the Fed, is still saying like, well, no, we're going to cut probably. Like you can look forward to that.
I can predict inflation. There will be more inflation. I don't know what the rate is going to be actually, but there will be more inflation.
So I mean, how do you know what the Fed's going to do? Well, you can listen to what they say. You can't really trust that.
Yeah.
Because they know that what they say has an effect on the economy. But look at what they're doing. They're not cutting.
Right.
Right? Don't look at what they're saying. Look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not cutting. So that means they don't feel good about where inflation is. They want it to come down still.
Yeah. But Canada is a slightly different story.
Canada is. It looks like we're heading into recession. Okay, I think we're in recession, but everything else is kind of pointing towards recession.
Yeah.
So again, typically,
which is not as inflationary.
So the state's not recessionary by all accounts. Canada, we suck on a whole number of levels. Things aren't good.
Well, productivity per capita is super low.
Yeah.
Investment in business and entrepreneurship is really low.
Yeah, all the business bankruptcies, employment.
Yeah.
it's like it's not looking good. And typically what you do, we talked about the Phillips
people, right?
Yeah,
blame it on other people.
But we talked about
all
the
those
Phillips
other
curve
podcasts,
before. Yeah.
And the people who listen to those other podcasts, I ain't gonna blame it.
I agree. But again, typically what you do in a recession is you cut rates. That's sort of the Keynesian model, right? So you cut rates to boost the available credit so that more business formation happens, more people get jobs, and then everything's great. And then you get too high and you have to raise rates again, right?
Yeah.
This constant thing. And we've talked again about fiscal dominance, how the amount of debt has changed the game, and maybe that doesn't work anymore. But for now, we're still operating under this premise that interest rates are probably going to be cut in Canada.
Yeah.
And so I asked Ben about that, like, hey, Ben, what happens, right? And he's like, yeah, it could be.
Pulled out his crystal ball and.
Well, if rates stay higher in the States and lower in Canada, less demand for our money is what that means. So that means likely the Canadian dollar is going to drop in value compared to the U.S. dollar.
It'll weaken significantly.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty likely. I think that's very likely to happen.
So if you're the kind of person who lives in Canada and has Canadian dollars and wants to go to the States for a vacation, it's going to be way more expensive.
Yeah, I guess that's the main thing to take from this podcast is prepay your Disney vacation now.
Yes.
As opposed to in August. No, I mean, what does that mean,
You
right?
heard it here first, folks.
It's all kind of grim for the Canadian economy.
Yeah.
And then, so let's overlay onto that some of these recent government announcements. We talked about the budget that's coming up. There's in 20 minutes, there's a new housing announcement from Trudeau, and we're not going to have that on the podcast, but
he decided to not come.
We reached out. He couldn't make it. Okay, so a couple things that they've announced, which some are more significant than others. So one was they're going to increase amortizations for first-time home buyers to 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, because I think it was 25 before, so that makes it a little bit more affordable for first-time home buyers.
Does that really move the needle for?
It's a few bucks.
So
right?
It's one more vote.
We should get Dan Patton back on to do the math because I can't in my head. Well, so again, it's the illusion of doing something for that section of voters, because that's what it's about, is voters. To say, hey, we're trying to do everything we can, and then if it doesn't work out,
there must be a huge amount of voters right at that cusp of they just can't afford a house.
I think they're a little further away from that. That section of the
population's growing, I guess.
Yeah, but it's just they're making it look like they're doing something, right? So you have all these, just this little trickle of announcements. They're going to increase the allowable amount you can take out from your RSP from, I think it was $30,000 now to $60,000.
So doubling.
Yeah. So assuming you have anything in your
buyers.
RSPs, for first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
So I guess good news if you actually have money saved up, and especially if you're a couple, I think you can both draw. So that would be cool.
Yeah. If you got $120,000.
Well, or let's say you each had 30 or something now. Before you could only take out X amount. So that's cool. I mean, to me, that just means we're going to take wealth and redirect it from one sector to another.
So taking it out of your RSP fund.
Yeah, so probably the stock market.
Yeah.
And now you're pushing it to housing. Is that what we want to do? I mean, hey, we're all for it, right? We love housing.
As real estate investors.
As real estate investors, we love all of these.
Yeah.
Because everything they're doing, everything they're announcing, isn't really anything to do with addressing the demand side.
Yeah.
It's not addressing monetary policy.
It's not addressing side or the supply side.
Supply side. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Well, I'm just thinking
they're not increasing supply.
Well, you said they have amortization relief for 25 to 30 years. So that looks like it's helping. Maybe it's a couple $100 on a payment. So now somebody who's just borderline can't afford it. Now they can. Okay, but now they've actually got into debt on something maybe they didn't want to be, and now they're stuck in it for another 5 years paying it. Yeah. So it's a shift in mindset. Like, debt doesn't really matter. Let's kick it down. Like they're really good at kicking this can as far down the road as possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, you should see Trudeau's quads. I bet they're huge just from all that kicking. I mean, there's a workout program for you, right? You want to strengthen your legs and your knees?
Professional can kicker. You got to, if you want to get on, Prime Minister of this country.
Yeah.
You got to practice now.
Let's see your legs. Yeah, don't skip leg day.
But yeah, that's what people experience when variable rates, like people were holding variable rates a couple years ago, rates come way up. But yeah, if you don't have your payment increase, your amortization gets extended. You could have mortgages, right? We talked about this like with 90 years or whatever.
Yeah. So there's another announcement related to that, but just on this first-time homebuyer thing, a lot of people have said like, this really means nothing.
Yeah.
Because if you're buying a new home, you got to put 20% down.
Right.
Generally speaking.
Even if you're
first-time home buyers, you're looking at 5% down, right? That's typical, especially with affordability. That's what they're doing. So what does this mean? But it's like, wait a minute. There is a segment. There are some condos, pre-construction condos, because this is only for new builds. Right. It's a very specific announcement, only for new builds. So all I can think of is they're trying to stimulate existing inventory of new build, probably condos. Because some of those you can get for 5 or 10%.
Yeah, what kind of first-time home buyer is buying $1 million?
Well, maybe it's a $500,000 condo, right?
Right.
Because condos you'll get in the lower price range. Certainly not the detached homes.
Yeah.
But some condo developments, they're doing 5 or 10% down, apparently.
Yeah.
So okay, that all kind of makes sense. Maybe they're just trying to deal with, because there's a ton of unsold inventory right now. A lot of builders hurting. Maybe they're trying to help them out. Right. Maybe that's what this is about. I don't know. More interesting announcement. Chrystia Freeland announced that they want to make permanent the increased amortization relief that they sort of had announced before. And I haven't really heard how that shaked out. But what they said basically was, if you are having trouble, you can talk to your bank, and with our federal government's blessing, we're going to allow you to increase your amortization based on financial hardship.
Right. So I have a lot of financial hardship.
Yeah. Mortgage guys, if you're listening, we both have a lot of financial hardship. So
I need my payments forgiven for the next 20 years, and then my kids will pay them off over 100 years. Would I qualify for that, by the way, under this?
It sounds like it, because it's based on the homeowner's assessment of their financial hardship.
Okay.
So
you self-assess your financial.
Yeah, I have financial hardship, and to an amount that they can afford, I think is what she said. So I can afford $500 a month. Does that sound good to you? I mean, joking aside, this is like
that's just a shift in the narrative again, right? From you're going towards let's make things more affordable by just pushing the can further down the road again.
Well, yeah, not addressing the issue of the actual price of the thing, but just increasing your payments.
The price will go up. The price will keep going up, but your payments will go down because you'll just say, I won't pay it for 10,
spending,
20.
increasing the money supply, the price of assets is going to increase.
Yeah. They don't want to acknowledge
maybe they know that.
They don't want to acknowledge it if they do know it.
Well, that's a much harder thing to, like austerity measures, nobody likes that. And this government certainly is not going to engage in that. So, I mean, essentially what they're saying is we kind of made this a rule for during COVID, but we want to enshrine this in, they call it the Canadian Mortgage Charter.
Charter of Slavery and Indebtedness?
Pretty much.
Okay.
But what it looks like, until we get more details, it looks like they're going to basically say, like, you can reduce your mortgage payments to whatever.
Yeah.
Which, okay, fine. But that means, like, the banks aren't giving this stuff away. That means you're increasing the term of your mortgage. So does that mean you could have a 60-year mortgage? And does that mean you could make, $100 in principal payments in a year and $50,000 in interest? I got to think the banks would love this, because now instead of having a customer for 30 years, and if you have a 30-year mortgage, you're probably paying just over double the value of the home. In like when you actually do the math, like in interest payments and everything.
So over 30 years on a $500,000 house, you're paying $1 million to the bank.
Yeah.
And you're getting your $500,000.
Yeah, and like everybody kind of gets that, right? That's how it is. That's the price of...
And that's why everyone wants to pay off their house faster and faster to, I don't give so much money to the bank.
Yeah. So now, if you could increase that to 60 years, does that mean you're paying 6, 7, 8 times the value of your home? Like the banks got to be just loving it.
So if the banks love it and the government loves it and the people love it, why would it not happen?
Exactly. Let's do it.
All right.
But you can see this.
But what does that mean? House prices go
up.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? There's no...
Who's against this? Like the tenants?
I don't know if anybody's against it. That's the beauty of doing it this way, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking in theory, like if this were to play out
tenants
over the
should
next...
be.
Yeah. Because like the cost will go pass on to the tenants eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
eventually, because the price of housing is going to continue to rise as they keep spending money they don't have. And so, right now, fine. You can, is this going to apply to just people in their principal residence, or is it anybody with a mortgage? And if it's anybody with a mortgage, so as an investor, fine, make it a 100-year mortgage. I don't care.
Yeah.
All I'm worried about is the cash flow and what I can refinance out of that property.
Yeah, because that interest is a tax deduction, right?
Yeah.
Like even if I only pay $100 in principal and every payment's like $4,000 in interest.
Yeah.
Well, I can deduct that off the income, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a win.
Yeah.
And do they realize this? Maybe. Do they care? I don't know. But at the end of the day,
they do care.
Helping.
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
It's not helping. So maybe, good news up front for people to reduce their payments, but not really good news.
Just on that note, like I'm just thinking, we've had a few tenants, lots of tenants. Actually, I had a few buy houses, right, over the years, and that's super exciting, and it's really cool to see someone come in, get a unit for like 4 years, and then buy a house, right?
Yeah.
Like get into the market. Okay, awesome. And kind of while they're in the house, they're like, mowing the grass and shoveling. They're getting some responsibility. But like we're getting tenants too who apply or who like come for viewings and stuff. And they're like, I feel like their financial sense is a little bit twisted by this whole thing because they're thinking, I'm going to buy a house in 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
And I'm going to rent here to save up.
Right.
Right. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this unit is a very nice quality, brand new, beautiful unit that I can't afford to live in.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is for a specific tenant who has in mind, like they want to live here for 2 years because of this and this reason.
Generally with a high
income. Yeah. Like it's premium product, right?
Yeah.
To get 2024 started, I wanted to try something
You got
different.
some funky thing going on over there.
Sorry, I'm not paying attention at all. I'm
There's
just
our
watching
sponsor,
YouTube.
our sponsor trying to get ads going on the show. But yeah, so now they're thinking I'm going to pay an exorbitant rent price compared to what they should be paying, is what I'm saying. Like the product they're offering is really good quality.
They should be renting from me.
Yeah.
In one of our like lousy units.
Well, I'm just like I did the same
really
thing
cheap.
in my career too. Like we rented for as cheap as we could find.
Yeah.
We went to like the scummiest place.
Yeah.
And we tried to find like the cheapest apartment, and we tried to stay there for as long as possible, and that's saving up, right? Like find someone and sleep on their couch for 2 years until you save up. Like that's how you save, right? You don't save by like finding the nicest house on the market and paying premium rent.
Yeah.
Right?
Hopefully none of your tenants are listening to this.
Well, I hope they are too, because like whatever, like we're here to try to help them too, right? So we usually don't want to accept people who want to be a tenant but are trying to save up for a house, and this is beyond their financial capacity.
Because they're just going to be stuck paying rent.
Yeah. And it's really frustrating when like the government makes these announcements to kind of just say, you know what? No, we don't have to endure any hardship. We can just kick the can down the road. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? The house price can keep going up. But like they're hurting these people, and then they're also setting a bad example, right? Like that mindset is what I get worried about and I interact with too, right? When people come to me and they're like, well, I don't have to work. I don't have to do I don't have to do the dishes that are in the sink. I don't have to maintain this property. I don't have to sweep the walkway off. I don't have to mow the grass. Like I don't have to do anything, and I just get free stuff. And then, why can't I afford a house, Mark? Like, well, I don't know. Like, it just, that really, it's saddening to see culture go that way and people have that financial sense or lack thereof. I don't know. But they just don't want to endure hardship or pain or suffering for any length of time, and they want to get a nice house.
But they expect it.
They expect to own a house.
And I mean, I mean, not that I disagree with your model of providing like premium housing.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what people like. These are nice units. They're nicer than what I live in. I think what you live in.
Yeah.
It's just not, I don't know. Obviously it's real, but to me it's not real. Like, that's not, even I would aspire to live in a house like one of your units at some point, but that's not, I'm not doing it right now.
Exactly.
But why, if you're renting, unless you have like a solid financial plan where, some people will talk about renting versus buying. And if you're super disciplined with your spending and your saving, renting could be better than buying, especially in a high price environment. Nobody ever, like, I don't believe it for a minute. Nobody ever does that.
So here's another tidbit, like, of our tenants, a handful of bought houses, others have become investors, right? So these are people who are like, actually, they can afford to buy a house, but they're choosing not to because of, like, they have a job here for 2 years or whatever, right?
Okay.
Like, that's the clientele.
Yeah.
And they actually have the resources to buy a house, right? So
interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting segment of the market, and like, I really, I don't know, we kind of stumbled into this, and I think it works well. But it's just when you get tenants that think that they can afford it, when when
they really can't.
Yeah, but
by the time they realize,
just make that comment because of this policy changes and like these announcements from the government is just not. It's just setting such a bad example of how to actually plan finances. You're focusing on the payment, not the overall price. Amortization relief. It's not like go to work and actually get a job and pay the debt.
Well, I mean, so the problem is, right, for existing homeowners.
Sorry for all that ranting, but
no, I encourage it, Brent. I hope you feel better. For a lot of homeowners, we can't really accuse them of being profligate or being.
What does that word mean?
Well, not like spending unwisely and living luxuriously, right? A lot of people just are having trouble with their mortgage payment. Yeah. Because, and maybe they bought too much house.
Right.
Maybe. But I mean, everybody's feeling the pain. Whether you're actually having trouble with it, or it's just like, wow, this really is eating into what I would normally be putting away, right? So you can't even make that argument that like this is just people being silly. So like it's kind of fine. It's good maybe it's helpful for existing homeowners, but over the long run, you can see it's not helpful for them.
Yeah.
Because, you're just going to increase your payments to 50 years instead of 30 or whatever.
Like, what's next in 5 years from now when interest rates or like payments prices go up? Yeah. Right? Because they keep printing money and the payments are back where they, max paying threshold for everybody again. And then the government wants to look popular, so they give relief again, right? And another 10 years. Like, we're already at 50 years. What's another 10 years? 60 years. Like, well, you're not going to live that long. Well, what's another 10 years then? You're not going to live past this anyway. Oh, okay, well, why don't we just,
And we've talked about it here, right? We've, I don't want to say I told you so, but kind of made that comment a long time ago that I'm sure we're going to look at increased amortizations in Canada, and it'd be something similar like maybe in France where you can have a 100-year mortgage, right? So it's just a generational home now.
There's only so many things you can do. Is you can increase the amount of time it takes to pay off the debt. You can decrease the rate, or what else can you do?
Well, you could decrease the price of the asset.
But
in the first place, but that's not going to happen. Right? Yeah. To do that, you have to decrease inflation.
Or move very far away to where no one wants to be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we know deflation is not going to happen. So,
anyways, now that we're fully detached from reality, let's get back to...
Well, I mean, so Trudeau has announced sort of on the supply side, hey, there's another $6 billion available to provinces. but only if they play by our rules, only if they do what we want. And the main demand there is fourplexes.
This is supposed to address new supply on the market, which is actually the problem, right? Like we've been saying.
It's one of the problems. The problem
There's
is
just not enough.
Inflation is monetary expansion. But supply would certainly help with that.
Yeah.
Because that's also a constraint.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're saying there's more money available, but like, I don't know. It's, again, I think it's just showmanship because there's strings attached and he knows the provinces are going to be prickly about.
What did he actually say? So he basically forcing everyone to do fourplexes?
Yeah, he says you have to make sure that all your municipalities allow fourplexes. And I mean, we're kind of on that road in Ontario already, but it's, doing it voluntarily versus someone telling you.
Yeah.
You're going to have resistance.
With the carrot at the end of the stick.
Yeah.
The money from the government or the federal government.
Yeah. So, I mean, how effective is that really, right? And they've made some other announcements. They're basically just recycling money from existing housing programs and that wasn't getting spent and like, oh, yeah, here's some more money to do this. But it's the same promises that they had made Didn't
they also say something about a renter's bill of rights?
Oh, yeah. I didn't write that down, but I wanted to talk about that. That one's kind of funny. Do you have the synopsis
Well, like
on
a
that?
national standard lease agreement. I don't have the full breakdown. I should pull it up. Basically just giving tenants, trying to buy the tenant vote, right?
Well, I mean, the main plank was, because they're saying how unfair it is that if you're a renter and you make all your rent payments, that
you can't build credit using that.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really, I don't think it makes sense at all.
So yeah,
right,
a paid rental payment or paying your rent on time will go towards
your credit score.
So that eventually, if you do want to buy a house, you have a good credit score if you've been paying your rent on time.
But I mean,
but not paying your rent on time.
Well, he didn't say that part.
That does not affect your credit score.
He didn't say that part. I don't know. In my experience, and I think in your experience, someone who doesn't pay their rent is also behind on their other payments.
Do they also come out with the renter's
stuff,
bill of responsibilities? Or?
No. No, but I mean, generally, if you're behind on your rent payments, you're probably behind on your other stuff.
Yeah.
Your credit's going to be lousy anyways.
Yeah.
And if you are paying your rent on time, again, I'm generalizing, but most of the people were like, you just know this person is not going to be a problem because they're always going to pay their rent on time.
Yeah.
They got stuff together and they're probably paying their other bills on time.
Yeah.
So
their
is
credit
it really
will be decent.
It'll probably be decent. So again, I think this is just like it's a nothing burger, and it's just he's trying to
grab attention.
So it's actually worse for renters, I think, right? Because if you enforce credit bureau, whatever you want to call it, like if you enforce the fact that rent goes now towards your credit, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
And landlords have been trying to organize this, right, through Front Lobby and other initiatives where you can voluntarily enroll if you're a renter in this now, and your rent payments actually will make a difference in your credit score.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're a responsible, quote-unquote, renter, like, yeah, great, let's do it. But if you don't, it goes against your credit score.
Yeah.
So we can roll this out nationally. Is it going to change anything? No.
Yeah.
The
It's
people
almost
who aren't
like
paying rent are going to get
the dashboard
penalized
cameras.
even worse.
It's like dashboard cameras for your insurance bill, right? Like if you want to lower your insurance, put a dashboard camera. But if you drive like a maniac, then maybe you don't want to put one in.
Exactly. But now you just legislate it for everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not helping. And so landlords should be loving this. Because this is what landlords have been saying is like, we need some kind of database of these professional tenants, the scammers who don't pay their rent.
Yeah.
And like not someone who just like had a hard couple months and was late on the rent.
Would you call them rent seekers? Or would the landlords be the rent seekers who are trying to seek rent from the...
It's
that was a bad joke.
It works on several different levels.
I'm not wearing my dad joke shirt.
Oh, yeah. I got to get you one. No, but it's really not, like it's good news for landlords, I think, better than for tenants. And it's just like, just another example. The government's trying to help, right? We're from the government, we're here to help. You're not helping.
Yeah.
You're making things better for landlords, if anything, because now landlords know, like, which people to avoid. You get the credit report and like your rent is on there, like you didn't pay your rent,
You know right away.
It's like, no, you are never going to. So for these people who maybe need a second chance, if you're into that, they're never going to be able to rent.
Yeah.
Like never.
Yeah.
No landlord looking at this is going to rent to them.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it was 5 years ago, right? If you have
2 or 3 applicants,
Yeah.
and one of them didn't pay their rent
Yeah.
for like 3 or 4 months, and
or
you paid it late for half a year,
like
who would you choose?
Out.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah, that could backfire, eh?
You think? And so then, what do you like? Is it just government housing for them, or so hard? You can't get government housing now, anyways. But again, not really addressing the problem, right?
Is that even a thing? Government housing?
It is. Yeah. It is. It's out there, but it's like years to get on the if you get on the list.
Yeah, I just don't think those two words go together. Like,
like government intelligence.
They're trying to minimize rent evictions as well, right? Try and help tenants fight landlord abuse. Which it's hard. I don't know. You read different stories. It's hard to know exactly how much of the landlord tenant board activity is like rent evictions, and because a tenant might think a rent eviction is one thing and the landlord thinks it's a different thing, and then the news gets a hold of it and it's like, wow, this is
that's a tough one, right? Because you'll have someone who buys a new apartment building, for example. These are the more high profile ones. You buy an apartment building that's like in bad shape,
just
and you got to fix it up. It's destroyed, right? So you have tenants who aren't paying rent, tenants who are destroying the place. And maybe the previous operator just did a bad job, whatever.
But the reality is a lot of those tenants are at low rents.
Like
compared to the market.
Right?
So it might be comfortable
10,
living in
years.
Something that works for them, but it's low price, right?
Well, or maybe they're not comfortable and they're like,
they wish it would be improved.
Or they're not paying rent because repairs aren't being made, whatever. So fine, you're the new owner. You come in and you're going to start fixing up units. Well, guess what?
It costs money.
You can't, it costs money, and you can't rent it out at that same, you can't rent a 2-bedroom apartment to somebody for $700 a month.
No.
Right? It's not going to cover your costs. of the
$700 to buy a stove these days, or like.
Dishwashers. Oh man, I was looking at dishwashers.
You weren't buying the dishwashers, you were just looking at it.
Yeah, I didn't buy one, just looked and kept walking. So rents are going to go up. And so what does that means, what you call renovictions. Like what is the answer to a rundown, dilapidated building where the owner isn't getting a lot in rent, doesn't have good cash flow, maybe everything he's making is going towards fixing the building. Like what's the solution?
The owner can't afford to do anything to it because there's just no money. And he can't sell it to somebody who can afford to do it.
Because that means you got to start fresh. You got to kick everybody out. Get new units, and so that's obviously there's a lot of play in between.
I wonder how much of that is also kind of caused by fixing the rent price, or like limiting the rent price to
having rent control. It's it's interesting, right? You see reasonable
because
rents.
it's just not such a big deal if you're paying market rent and you have to get evicted because your unit is like in utter disrepair, but you just go next door and you pay the same amount. Like then it's like, who cares? Well, you have moving expenses, but if the landlord has to pay for the moving expenses and you actually end up in a nicer unit for like maybe $100 more or whatever, you're better off at the end of the day. And then the building, the infrastructure that the whole country needs housing, and the infrastructure is sitting there dilapidated, and you want to fix it up, improve it. Well,
and people have used Alberta sort of as the example for that. Like there's no rent control there, but rents have been reasonable. They're increasing now because more people are. There's scarcity and everything else. Like of course they're going up because it's going up everywhere in the country, but not to the levels that we see in Ontario.
I think it's actually healthier because, like, let's say you're a tenant and you live somewhere and you like where you live and you have rent control, so you're good, but you get a job opportunity that's like 2 hours away. Well, I can't, like, let's say you could double your salary, but if I move, I'm paying like triple the rent. Well, like you kind of stifle this growth in development in that whole segment of the population a bit, right? Because you have people that won't take opportunities or won't move or won't change anything because the biggest cost in their life is going to double or triple.
Yeah.
Right. And the longer you wait, the worse it gets.
Yeah. We have some tenants in inherited units that you can see that.
They've been on the lease forever. And
they've been there forever, and they're making zero attempts to improve their living and their living situation isn't great.
Yeah.
But they're making zero attempts to improve it because, why? Their rent is fixed. That's the biggest cost, right? And if the government is going to cover most of that, then who cares? I mean, that's maybe a secondary effect.
Yeah. So we never really wanted to talk about this. So is there any other things?
I love talking about it.
Now that we've totally lost all of our tenants on this show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some of the stories that have come out recently deal with corruption in all levels of government. You've got the ArriveCan thing. You've got this electric truck grant program thing in BC.
What is that? I never heard about that.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, this doesn't directly affect real estate, but it sort of does in that we're talking about inflation, right? Increase in the money supply, the government spending money on bureaucracy. And you would think...
more government jobs.
Yeah, you would think with the increase in bureaucracy, they would be able to administer programs. But as it turns out, most grant programs in Canada are administered by a third party, or a lot of them anyways. And this one specifically in BC...
And the third party being private sector?
Yeah. So the one in BC, now this is provincial government, but it's symptomatic of all governments, right? There's a clean energy grant program.
Yeah.
And it's administered by a third party. Okay, fine, whatever. If they're more efficient, then good. This Edison Trucks, who is the only large electric truck manufacturer in BC. So that's important to remember. And there's a grant specifically for large vehicle electrification, right? And they could not ever get a grant from any of the programs, and not this program. The last time they applied, they got an email back saying, "Hey, you can't, you didn't qualify. Your application wasn't great." But good news, you can go to, there's a partner who will help you write this grant.
Yeah.
And so they noticed that the person on the emails from the grant program and then the company that would write the grant was the same person.
Different email address.
Different email address. And they're like, same first name, same last name, different email. Is it a different person? They're like, they found out, no, it's the same person. So the company administering the grant program is the same company that was offering help to everybody to write grants. Basically to apply for the grant.
To write the application.
Right? And they gave a number of reasons why their grant wasn't successful. They all kind of look like nonsense. Maybe they're right? The guy's like, we're truckers. Yeah. We're not grant writers, we're truckers. So maybe we weren't right, but just it didn't seem right. So so you have a company and they take 20% of the grant money. So they're approving the grants and they're writing the grant applications for people.
Why am I not surprised?
And so this went to to the legislature. Everybody claimed we didn't this trucking company sent all the documents out to the government.
Yeah.
Didn't go to the press right away. Eventually the press got a hold of it and now it's out there. But they're like, we have MPs saying we didn't know anything about this, but we have a picture in their office, right, when we went there to hand deliver these documents and say, I think there's a corruption problem here. And, the MPs are like, or MPPs, just like, no, we didn't know any. First I've heard about this, which reminds me of somebody else who said I haven't heard about any of this stuff before in the federal government. But anyways, since this has come out, there's been more allegations, and I'm quick to believe them, of course. They're not proven, but more allegations that this is just how it works in government. It's just corruption all the way down, and especially for any government grants, nobody actually gets these grants.
Yeah.
Right? It's just people making money
writes the
for writing the
application
grants.
works for the company that administers the grant.
I mean, we can't say this is the case everywhere, but surely it's not an isolated incident. And I think Ben Rabbit, who tweeted that, basically Canada is an unserious country led by unserious people. And just there's so many. Okay, here's an example. I know we're getting close on time here, but something that Ben and a few other people, like Ron the mortgage guy, who have testified before the House of Commons. Here's something you could do: tie your income verification for your mortgage application to the CRA. The CRA has all the information. Like last year, as long as you filed taxes, right? They have the actual income that you made. Yeah. So all you got to do is, if you apply for a mortgage, the bank just ties the CRA and verifies that what you sent in is true. Yeah. And boom, you can eliminate most mortgage fraud immediately. And there's a number of cases of egregious mortgage fraud.
And why can't they do that?
Because they don't have the will to do it.
But they're going to do CBDCs, and then they will be able to do it. And for those of you who don't know, a CBDC is a central bank digital currency.
That's in the works, right? And that will probably be tied to all your payments, right? Yeah.
If you want your UBI payment that we mentioned before, you got to use the CBDC.
Yeah. And get rid of cash.
Yeah.
And there's a few countries that are trying this out, right? I think we talked about Nigeria before. I can't remember where else, but they're basically getting rid of cash.
Yeah.
And these are all very wild collected thoughts, but it all kind of points to the same thing: increased government control, increased prices, the death of the middle class. Yeah. And if you hold real estate, keep holding it, because
persistent asset inflation.
Yes.
At the expense of those who save.
Yeah. Yeah, so the middle class, the thing they have going for them is high income. That's just going to get eaten away. Yeah. And
I have a little quote from Lynn Alden on that topic. She said, "Real estate captures the spread between the scarcity of real estate and borrowing an abundant asset to build it." So the abundant asset being like the fiat money, right?
Yeah.
So essentially what she says is you're investing in a short on fiat.
Yes.
So you're owning something that you think is going to go up relative to the dollars.
Yeah, you're borrowing the one thing that's not scarce to get the thing that's scarce.
Yeah, and that's like real estate investing in a nutshell, right?
Yes.
And she also said it's also the one socially acceptable asset that you can perform 5x leverage on.
Yeah.
And we talked about getting a mortgage, the fact that you're creating new money. Well, you're actually putting 20% down and getting 80%. So you're owning 100% of the value of the asset.
Yeah.
You're 5x leverage, and that's socially acceptable. Like, it's just a norm in our culture that you can get a mortgage, you can get a house, you only own 20% of it, but you actually own 100% of the gains. So yeah, just interesting to kind of summarize what you just were talking about. Like, we're shorting fiat by buying real estate, and we're getting 5x leverage on it.
Well, we could have said that, but that would have been a really short podcast.
That's not something we're good at.
No. So,
but if I was in government, I would be good at spending free money too. So,
yeah. And I guess the summary is that's only going to continue. So, you might as well buy real estate.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Is
that where you want to leave it?
I think so. We'll go out on a whimper. That's it's still, I don't know, the case for real estate still looks bullish. Yeah. I'm looking elsewhere, but Canada is still, until things change in a major way, which I don't see happening.
Go out there, do difficult, challenging things to add value to people. What did Jimmy Song say? Add value where you can to the marketplace.
Exactly.
And
short the dollar.
Yeah, take the benefit in there and try and get something that's not dollars for it. All right.
Okay, well, thanks, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And if you didn't, there's always next time. So until next time.
Steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.